My own
You and
uncle
your
thought he
children will
buried
leave
us,
this land.
but he didn't realize we were seeds. I'm
You are
Elliot,
dead
and
on
today
the
the
line.
thief
You
is
and
back
your
for
children will
everything.
leave this land.
Before we continue, please subscribe, like, and
You
share.
are dead on the
Your support
line.
means everything.
You and your
Thank
children
you.
will leave this land.
Listen, in my village of Asia, Nigerian, my
You are
father
dead on
Franklin
the line.
was a king
In my
without a
village of
crown.
Asia, my
You need
father
to
Franklin
understand
was
the
a
kind of
king
man
without
he
a
was.
crown. He
He didn't just walk,
He beat us
he
a
moved
home.
with the weight of
In
a
my
mountain.
village of Asia,
He
my
was the
father
only
Franklin
man in our
was a
family
king without
line
a
who
crown.
looked at the
He us a
forest
home.
and saw a
He beat
palace.
us a home.
He
In
worked
my
until
village
his
of Asia,
palms
my
were as
father
hard as
Franklin
the
was
bark
a
of an
king
iroko
without a
tree,
crown.
and he
He us a
built us a
home.
home.
He beat us a
6
home.
rooms. Can you
My
imagine?
chest! What's wrong?
In a
Someone
village
help!
where many shared one room with goats,
help
we
him
had
out.
6.
Easy now,
And 2
breathe.
grand parlors. One for visitors and one
What
for
is
the
it?
family to sit and
Daddy,
dream.
what's
I
wrong?
was only
Is it
6
your
years
heart?
old, but
We
I
need to
remember
help him.
running through those hallways, the floor cool
What
under my
is it?
feet.
Hold on.
My
Daddy,
brothers,
what's
Kingsley and
wrong? Is
Oliver,
it your
were just
heart?
toddlers
We need to
trailing
help him.
behind me. We were the rich children. We were the ones people pointed at with envy. But my father, God bless his soul, was too kind. He saw his younger brother, Damien Cross, struggling. He didn't say, "Stay in your small hut." No. He opened our doors. He said, "Damien, bring your wife, bring your 2 children. This house is big enough for all of us." My father was building a home, but Damien Cross? He was sitting in our parlor, measuring the walls with his eyes, waiting for the day he could claim them as his own. The snake was already in the garden, eating our bread and smiling at our faces. Life is a vapor, my people. One minute you are laughing, the next, the air leaves your lungs. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was angry that day, scorching the earth. My father came in from the farm, but he wasn't carrying a harvest. He was clutching his chest. He called my mother. "Lumina, Lumina." His voice sounded like dry leaves rubbing together. My mother ran to him, her heart already sensing the disaster. He looked at her, his eyes full of a strange fear. "My heart, it's tearing. It's paining me so much." Before she could even scream for help, before I could reach his side to hold his hand, my father collapsed. The pillar of our lives crumbled right there on the polished floor of the parlor he built. He was gone. Just like that. The man who protected us was now a body. My mother, Lumina. Oh, her cry. It wasn't a normal cry. It was a sound that ripped through the roof of that 6-room house and reached the heavens. She knew. She knew the man who held the shield over our heads was gone, and the rain was about to start falling. In our land we honor the dead. But Damien Cross? He was honoring the opportunity. For 2 weeks he pretended to cry. He wore the black clothes, he sat on the floor, he received the mourners. But behind those closed doors he was a different man. He didn't wait for the mourning period to end. He didn't wait for the dirt to settle on my father's grave. He called my mother into the parlor, the same parlor where my father used to give us advice. "Lumina," he said, his voice cold, devoid of any brotherly love. "Franklin is gone. I am the man now. Bring the money. Every kobo he saved. The burial money, the land money, the savings for the children's school. Hand it over." My mother was a widow in shock. She didn't want trouble. She thought, maybe if I give him the money he will look after my 3 boys. She brought the little we had, everything my father had sweated for, and placed it in Damien's greedy palms. He took it without a "thank you." He took it and looked at her as if she was a stranger in her own home. That was the moment the light went out for us. Then came the night that changed everything. The night I realized that blood doesn't always mean family. We were in our room, the 4 of us. Mother, me and my 2 brothers huddled together for warmth. Suddenly the door swung open. Damien Cross stood there, smelling of local gin and malice. "Get out," he barked at me. "Elliot, take your brothers and wait outside. I have words for your mother." I was only 6, but I felt the evil in the air. I picked up little Oliver, who was only 2 and crying for milk. I held Kingsley's hand and we sat on the porch in the dark, shivering. Then the scream came. "Abomination. Damien, no." I ran to the door and looked through the keyhole. My mother was backed into a corner, her wrapper tied tight, her eyes wide with horror. Damien was trying to force himself on her. His own brother's widow. Only 2 weeks after the funeral. "How can you do this?" my mother wept. "Is this how you honor Franklin? Am I not the mother of your nephews?" Damien's face turned red with rage. He had been rejected. And a man like Damien doesn't take no for an answer. He pointed a finger at her and hissed, "From this day, Lumina, you will wish you were dead with your husband." The next morning the war became public. Damien didn't just want my mother. He wanted everything. He went to the village square and started telling people that my father had left the lands to him, in a secret meeting. He went to our farm, the one with the best yams and the tallest palm trees, and he put marks on the trees. My mother wouldn't sit down and watch her children starve. She tied her wrapper firmly and went to the council of elders. She knelt in the dust of the village square, her 3 boys behind her. "Elders of Asia," she cried. "Justice. My husband's brother has taken our money, and now he wants our land. He wants to starve the orphans of Franklin." But you see, my people, Damien had already been visiting the elders at night. He had used my father's own money to buy their silence. One man, Gideon Wolf, stood up. He didn't look at my mother's tears. He looked at the ground. "Lumina," he said, "in our tradition, a woman cannot own land if the husband has a surviving brother. Damien is the head of the house now. Go home and be quiet." My mother looked at them, her heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. She realized then that in Asia the cry of a widow is often drowned out by the sound of falling coins. After the elders turned their backs on us, Damien Cross didn't stop. No, he wanted us gone. He didn't just want the house, he wanted the memory of us erased. One afternoon I was behind the house, near the edge of the bush. I was a hungry 6-year-old boy, scratching the ground, looking for insects or wild berries, anything to stop the kren-kren sound my stomach was making. Suddenly I heard a voice. "Elliot, my brave nephew." I looked up and there was Uncle Damien. He was smiling, a big wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. In his hands he held 2 massive, beautiful white yams. They were washed clean, looking like gold in the afternoon sun. "You are hungry, aren't you?" he asked. I couldn't even speak, I just nodded. "Take these," he said, shoving them into my small arms. "Take them to your mother. Tell her it's a gift of peace. But wait, don't show anyone yet. Keep them hidden under your shirt until you get inside." I was a child. I thought my father had spoken to him from the grave. I thought he had changed. I took those yams and hugged them to my chest like they were life itself. I didn't know I was hugging my own funeral. I hadn't even taken 10 steps toward our room when the world exploded. Damien, who had just been whispering kindly, suddenly let out a roar that shook the trees. "Thief! Thief!
What have you done?
Come and see,
Look at them
abomination!"
now!
He
This
grabbed
is your
my ear and
fault!
twisted it until I screamed, the yams
What have
falling
you
to the
done?
dust. I
Look
caught
at them
him.
now!
Damien
This
yelled
is
as
your
the neighbors
fault!
began to run out of their houses.
What have
I
you
caught
done?
Franklin's first son
Look at them
stealing from
now!
the communal barn.
This is your
Look
fault!
at the yams. Look at the greed of
What
this
have
boy.
you done?
I was shaking,
Look
the
at
dust
them
mixing
now!
with my tears.
This is your fault!
Uncle gave them to me. He gave them to me. I wailed. But Damien looked at the crowd with fake tears in his eyes. "You see," he said to the villagers, "not only is he a thief, he is a liar. He wants to tarnish my name to cover his shame. Lumina has raised a criminal." The village square filled up faster than a marketplace. My mother, Lumina, came running, her hair disheveled, her heart pounding. She saw me on the ground, the yams in the dirt, and Damien standing over me like a conqueror. She tried to speak, but the voices of the people drowned her out. In our land, stealing yam is a spiritual crime. It is a curse on the soil. The elders didn't ask for my side. They didn't care that I was 6. Gideon Wolf stood up, his face as hard as a rock. "We have tried to help this family," he lied, "but the blood is sour. If we keep a thief in Asia, our own crops will fail. The gods will be angry." He pointed his staff at my mother. "Lumina, take your 3 seeds of shame and leave. You are banished. You have until the moon is high to cross the boundary. If you are seen here tomorrow, the youth will treat you like the filth you have become. My people, have you ever been hunted by the people who used to call you neighbor?" As the sun began to set, the village youths gathered. They didn't use stones, but they used something worse, their voices. They started a song, clapping their hands in a rhythm that felt like lashes on my back. "Thief of yam, go! Thief of yam, go!" They followed us as we walked toward the edge of the village. My mother was carrying Oliver on her back. She held Kingsley's hand with her left and mine with her right. We had nothing. No extra clothes. No food. Not even a cup to drink water. I looked back one last time. I saw our 6-room house standing tall in the distance. I saw Damien Cross standing on the porch, waving a mocking goodbye. We crossed the village boundary, line into the deep, dark forest, and the sound of the clapping finally faded into the silence of the night. That first night in the bush? I will never forget it. The forest doesn't care if you are an orphan. The mosquitoes bit us until our skin was lumpy. The rain fell on us without mercy, soaking the only clothes we owned. But my mother, Lumina, she is a lioness. She found a hollow under a giant silk cotton tree. She gathered dry leaves to make a bed for us. For 1 month, my people, we lived like animals. We ate wild fruits. We drank water from the hollows of trees. My brother's ribs began to show through their skin. Kingsley stopped crying because he didn't even have the energy to make a sound. Every night, my mother would hold us close, her body acting as a blanket. She would whisper, "God is seeing us. The sun that sets today must rise tomorrow." We started gathering fallen branches, tying them with vines to make firewood. We would walk for hours to the edge of a neighboring village's market to sell, a bundle just to buy one piece of roasted corn to share among the four of us. We were the ghosts of the bush, forgotten by the world, but held together by a mother's love. One afternoon, the sun was peering through the thick canopy of the bush like 1,000 needlepoints of light. I had wandered a bit further than usual, searching for dry irako branches that would burn long and hot. My feet were used to the thorns by now, my skin had become like leather. Suddenly I heard voices, low, rough like the sound of grinding stones. I froze. In the bush you don't call out, you hide. I dropped to my belly and crawled behind a thick fern. Not far from me stood 3 men. They didn't look like farmers. They wore heavy boots and had faces that looked like they had never smiled in their lives. One of them pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. I squinted my eyes. It was a picture of the king of the neighboring kingdom, King Alistair. "Tonight," the tall one whispered, his voice dripping with poison. "The palace guards at the back gate have been paid. We enter through the garden, we finish the king in his sleep, and by morning, Preston will be the one to wear the crown." My heart was jumping in my chest like a trapped bird. I stayed as still as a stone until they disappeared into the shadows. I ran back to our house, that hollow tree that smelled of damp earth and smoke. I was gasping for air. "Mother, mother," I cried. I told her everything, the men, the picture, the plan to kill the king. My mother Lumina sat there for a long time. Her face was thin, her collarbones sticking out from hunger. She looked at me, then at Kingsley and Oliver, who were chewing on a piece of bitter wild root. She could have said, "Elliot, it's not our business. We are beggars. Let the rich kill the rich." But no. My mother is a woman of the word. She stood up and tied her tattered wrapper tight around her waist. "Elliot," she said, her eyes flashing with a light I hadn't seen since my father died. "If we know of evil and do nothing, the evil belongs to us too. We are going to the palace. We may be beggars, but we will not be silent witnesses to murder." The walk to the king's palace was long. By the time we reached the great iron gates, we were covered in the dust of the road. We looked like the very definition of problem. The security guards, dressed in their proud uniforms, looked at us with disgust. "Get back," one shouted, waving a baton. "This is a palace, not a dumping ground for bush people." My mother didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her head held high. "I must speak to the king or the prince," she said. "It is a matter of life and death." The guards laughed. It was a cruel, mocking sound. "Life and death? The only thing dying here is our patience. Move before we whip you like the thieves you look like." I felt the heat of shame rising in my cheeks. I remembered the yams. I remembered Asia. I thought, is the whole world against us? Just as the guard raised his hand to push my mother, a black car with tinted windows pulled up. The gates began to creak open. But the car stopped. The back window rolled down and a young man, Prince Julian, looked out. He saw my mother's face and for some reason he didn't see the rags. He saw the dignity in her eyes. "Wait," Julian said to the guards. He stepped out of the car. He looked at me, Kingsley, and Oliver, then at my mother. "Mother, why are you disturbing the peace of the palace? If it is money you need, I will give you some, but please, do not bring your children to wander the gates." My mother stepped close to him. She didn't reach for his wallet. She looked him straight in the eye and whispered, "Prince Julian, if you take my money and send me away, your father will not see tomorrow's sun. The hunters are already in the forest. They have the map to his bedroom." The prince's face turned from bronze to ash. He didn't hesitate. He saw the truth in my mother's desperation. "Get in the car," he commanded. The security guard's jaws dropped as we, the bush people, the firewood sellers, climbed onto the leather seats of the royal vehicle. Inside the palace it was like a dream. Gold on the walls, soft carpets that swallowed my feet. But we weren't there to sightsee. Julian took us to a private study where the king was sitting. I told my story again. I described the 3 men. I described the picture. I even remembered the name they mentioned, Preston. The king's face went cold. He called his head of security, a man as big as a house. "Check the back gate," the king ordered, "and find Preston. Now." That night we weren't sent back to the bush. We were given a small room in the servants' quarters and a plate of real food. As I ate, I realized, for the first time in a month, we weren't sleeping under the rain. The palace was deathly quiet that night, but it was the silence of a trap waiting to snap shut. The king had moved to a secret room, but his bed? They had stuffed it with pillows to look like a sleeping man was lying there. I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window of our small room watching the moon. Suddenly I saw them. 3 shadows, no 4. They climbed over the back wall like silent lizards. They had the guns I saw in the bush, long and black, reflecting the moonlight. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would wake the whole palace. They crept toward the king's balcony, their boots making no sound. They thought they were the hunters, but they didn't know the king's elite guards were hidden in the bushes behind the curtains and under the stairs, holding their breath. The lead assassin stepped onto the balcony. He raised his gun, aimed it at the body in the king's bed, and click. Before he could pull the trigger, the entire palace courtyard lit up with floodlights. "Drop your weapons," a voice boomed like thunder. It was the head of security. The assassins froze, blinded by the light. From every corner, soldiers emerged with their rifles pointed at the hearts of the intruders. One of the assassins tried to run, but he didn't even get 2 steps before a soldier tackled him to the ground. Within minutes, all 4 men were pinned to the earth, their faces pressed into the dirt. They were handcuffed, heavy iron biting into their wrists. The king stepped out onto the balcony, looking down at them. "Who sent you?" he asked. His voice was low, but it shook the ground. They didn't want to talk at first. They were tough men. But when the police arrived and began to show them that a prison cell is a very lonely place to die, their tongues loosened. "It was Preston," the tall one screamed. "He gave us the guns. He gave us the map. He said he would make us chiefs when he took the throne." Preston. The man was a billionaire. He had more money than the king, more cars than the village had goats. He thought he could buy the crown like he bought his mansions. But that same night, the police sirens wailed through the city. They went to Preston's house while he was sipping expensive wine, waiting for the news of the king's death. Instead of a crown, they gave him handcuffs. They dragged him out in his silk pajamas while his neighbors watched in shock. Money can buy a bed, my people, but it cannot buy a clear conscience. The next morning, the sun rose with a different kind of warmth. The king called for us. We were still in our ragged clothes, but the servants had given us warm water to wash. We stood in the great hall. The king looked at my mother, Lumina. He looked at her hands, rough from selling firewood, and then he looked at me, the thief from Asia. "Lumina," the king said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You and your son have done for me what my own advisors could not. You saw the wolf and you didn't run. You came to save a man who didn't even know your name." He turned to his ministers. "From this day, this woman is no longer a stranger. These boys are no longer orphans of the bush. They are the king's own family." He ordered the royal tailors to bring the finest fabrics. He ordered the royal chefs to prepare a feast. For the first time in years, I saw my mother smile. Really smile. Weeks passed and our life changed like a dream. We were moved into a beautiful house within the palace grounds, not 6 rooms but 10. Kingsley and Oliver were eating so well their cheeks became round and glowing. The king didn't just give us food, he gave us a future. He set up a business for my mother, a grand warehouse for trading. But as I sat in my new room looking at my soft bed, my mind went back to Asia. I remembered the song of shame. I remembered the dust. Uncle Damien Cross laughing as we were chased away. I looked at my hands. They were clean now, but the scars from the bush were still there. I turned to my mother and said, "Mother, the king has made us rich. But we have a debt to pay back home. Not a debt of money, but a debt of justice." My mother nodded slowly. "The time is coming, Elliot. The Lord who took us out of the bush is the same Lord who will take us back to Asia." 10 years had passed. I was no longer that skinny 6-year-old with ribs showing through his skin. I was 28, a man of stature, educated and backed by the king's own hand. My mother, Lumina, sat beside me in the back of a black SUV, her wrapper made of the finest lace, her skin glowing like polished mahogany. Behind us was a convoy of cars, carrying supplies, workers, and a few of the king's security men, not for war but for protection. As we crossed the boundary of Asia, the same boundary where the villagers had clapped us out with songs of shame, I felt a shiver. The road was still dusty. The trees looked the same. But the people, they looked tired. They looked like a people whose spirit had been drained. We drove straight to the village square, the dust from our tires rising like a cloud of judgment. The village gathered. They thought a big politician had arrived. They didn't recognize the woman in the lace or the man in the suit. But then my mother stepped out of the car. She stood in the center of the square, the same spot where she had knelt and begged for justice 10 years ago. A gasp went through the crowd. "Lumina," someone whispered. "Is that the widow of Franklin?" Then came Damien Cross. He was older now, his face wrinkled and his clothes tattered. The wealth he had stolen from us hadn't lasted. You see, stolen wealth is like water in a leaking bucket. No matter how much you pour, it will never stay full. When he saw me, his eyes went wide. He started shaking. I walked up to him, not with a weapon but with the weight of the truth. "Uncle," I said, my voice echoing, "I have come to return the yams you gave me." He fell to his knees, his mind fracturing from the shock and the guilt. He couldn't handle the sight of the boy he tried to kill. He fell ill that very hour, and within days the confusion of his spirit led him to his grave. Gideon Wolfe and the other surviving elders stepped forward. They didn't stand tall this time. They bent their heads. "Elliot," Gideon said, his voice trembling, "we were blinded by greed. We were pressured by your uncle. We have lived with the shame of what we did to your mother and your brothers. Please, do not destroy our village in your anger." I looked at them. I looked at the people who had clapped and sang the song of shame. I could have leveled the village. I could have taken back every inch of land and left them with nothing. But my mother touched my shoulder. "Elliot," she whispered, "a king does not rule by revenge, he rules by mercy." I took a deep breath. "I forgive you," I told the village. "But the Asia you knew is dead. Today we build a new one." I didn't just forgive them with words, I forgave them with action. I stayed in Asia for a year. I used the wealth the king had given me, and the businesses I had built to transform the land. I tore down the old, crumbling huts and helped people build. I built a modern school where no child would ever be called a thief because they were hungry. I built a hospital so that no father would die of a tearing heart, because there was no medicine. And the most important thing? I brought the water. I built a massive borehole with taps in every corner of the village. No more trekking to the river. No more drinking from the same place the cows bathed. I tarred the roads from the boundary to the market. Asia became the jewel of the state. I turned my father's 6-room house into a library for the youth, and I built my mother a mansion that made the 6-room house look like a shed. Before I left to return to my duties with the king, I called one last meeting. I told them, from this day on, let it be a law in Asia. We do not banish the poor. We do not silence the widow. If there is a crime, we call the police. We use our brains and our hearts, not our anger. If you see a hungry child, you don't call him a thief, you give him a piece of yam. To those who are being oppressed by Uncle Damiens in their lives, be patient. The sun does not ask the moon for permission to rise. Keep your hands clean, keep your heart pure, and watch how the universe fights for you. The villagers cheered. This time the clapping wasn't a song of shame, it was a song of celebration. My brothers, Kingsley and Oliver, stood by my side, strong, educated young men. We were the orphans the bush couldn't swallow. We were the family the village couldn't break. My people, if you are listening to this on my channel today, I want you to take this to heart. Lesson: never judge a man by his today. God can take a boy from a hollow tree in the bush and put him in a palace in a single night. To those who are being oppressed by Uncle Damiens in their lives, be patient. The sun does not ask the moon for permission to rise. Keep your hands clean, keep your heart pure, and watch how the universe fights for you. And to the Damien Crosses of this world, be careful. The person you are trying to bury might just be a seed. When they grow, they will overshadow you. Thank you so much for watching this African tale. Tell me, where are you watching from? Please drop your thoughts in the comments section. I'd really love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring African stories. And always remember, love, faith, and courage are the greatest treasures you can ever have. God bless you all. Bye.